Right, let's turn to this now. Passenger Rail Agency of South Africa, Prasa, will increase its capital spending over the next medium-term expenditure framework. The 50 billion rand will be channeled towards the rolling stock and infrastructure investments made in the previous year. This was revealed by the Group CEO Hishaam Emeran during the two-day Southern African Railways Association conference in Midrand. The CEO is with us now in the studio to unpack that and more on their spending, at least over the next financial year. Good to have you, and thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much, Thabo, and good evening to your viewers as well.
Well, I mean, of course, we're going to speak about the challenges. We're also going to speak about the triumphs. The triumphs in this particular instance is that for first time in a while, Prasa has at least upped its capital expenditure to what, 13 billion rands, and you're looking at upping that to about 50 billion rands. Would you agree that you could have done maybe more had it not been, of course, for the minor bottlenecks, or maybe major, depending on how you look at them, that you're still needing to deal with, particularly around the Cape Central line?
Absolutely. One would have liked to have done more. As you correctly pointed out, last year we had a budget of 12.6 billion, and for the first time Prasa executed on its capital program. In fact, we exceeded. We spent 13.5 billion. This year we've got a budget of 12.9. And again, we're well underway to execute on our capital allocation. And as you've mentioned in your opening remarks, it's around the rolling stock renewal program, the corridor recoveries, and the signaling program.
Yeah. The big challenge, which I'm sure you have looked at as well, and might have been a bit of an eyesore, is the report on the state of the railway space. 97% security-related incidents being of theft and vandalism. Theft of assets making, what, 77.6% of that. So there were 8,600 security-related issues. So in all that spend, as you're putting all that money there, it looks like there's still a challenge of securing those assets.
Look, absolutely. The security report that was recently released, that refers to rail nationally, not just Prasa. It includes your freight rail as well. But you are correct. I mean, the railway system, the network has been badly impacted by theft and vandalism, stripped to a large extent. And certainly our recovery and rebuild program at Prasa now is underpinned by a solid security strategy, so that we don't see a repeat of what has happened. And already in the last year, 2 years, we've seen significant improvements. We are not there yet, but there's been progress in terms of reducing the occurrences, both from a security point of view, but also safety as well.
Yeah. Pedestrians, what is it? Is it still a signaling issue? Pedestrians being struck on by trains at some point. We were talking about that, saying the signaling issue, but also it's just the parameter fences, for example, at stations that we're not holding up and allowing pedestrians actually to cross the railway lines.
That's in fact the key aspect in terms of pedestrians. We still got a very open network. People can cross over the railway line quite easily. And that is happening. We are now busy rolling out a walling and fencing program, particularly in those high-risk areas. But we've got a network of approximately 2,300 kilometers of rail. This is just Prasa. Yeah. The network across the country is a lot bigger. Yeah. So we need to look at those high-risk areas. There are still too many fatalities in terms of pedestrians that are walking within the rail reserve. Sometimes it's seen as the safest place to be walking from a crime and that perspective. But certainly from rail operations, as we start recovering the lines, as we start bringing more trains onto the network, we want to ensure that there's no illegal crossing of our railway corridors. Yeah.
Again, 1,800 occurrences of safety-related operations. It's not all yours, as you put it. Some of it, I mean, including the explosion of dangerous goods, probably might not necessarily be sitting on your side. But in terms of your own safety record, what do you account for in those 1,800 incidents?
So we've seen a massive reduction, but I just want to indicate up front that we've put safety up front in terms of and this is operational safety. Just this year we launched our Asipepe campaign, as to be safe. And this is to ensure that internally as well as externally. So internally we're ensuring that our staff is going through refresher training. the issue about running the train safely, communicating with our passengers. We've rolled it out, and that's not an event within Prasa. It's an ongoing thing where we've got courses, seminars around that. And then also on our sites itself, where we are dealing with our contractors that's working within our environment. And then very importantly, our teams are going out to the schools and communities to share the risk of being next to the railway corridor, playing and crossing the railway corridors. We have to be dealing with that. So what we have seen in just this first let's call it the first half of this year, where initially we do benchmarking in terms of where we see the number of occurrences, we've seen close to a 50% reduction year on year in terms of both the security as well as the safety occurrences. The numbers are still too high. One is still too many. But if we are tracking and acknowledging we're still running a limited service, but we have met our targets in terms of reducing the number of occurrences. But by no means are we happy with one occurrence within our network.
The conversation tonight with the Prasa Group CEO, and taking your thoughts on 072-110-5584. How are you experiencing the renewed infrastructure, especially the lines that have been open? I've seen some conversations going on Twitter of people who are enjoying being on the trains, one, being cost effective, but two, it's very clean. Apparently it's being sanitized at every stop, and the trains by and large running on time. The number of kilometers, though, seemingly that is being covered in terms of production, seeing a little bit of a decline. Prasa production declined to 74%. To what do you account that?
Yeah. We're not running the full service as yet. We're still recovering corridors. Pre-COVID, we were operating 40 corridors nationally. We have now recovered 26 of those corridors. The rest of the corridors we are working on. For example, here in Gauteng, we're working on the Randfontein corridor, the corridor down to Vereniging, and then we want to bring back the Davidton as well as Springs line. So we've got contractors that's awarded for many of these corridors. So that relates to the number of trains that we are running, because there are fewer corridors. But secondly and importantly is we also need to bring back our signaling system. At this point in time, we're not able to run a high-frequency service. In other words, run trains, more trains on the corridor. We're running a train typically every 30 to 45 minutes, whereas in the peak period, we should be down to 5-minute frequencies. So once we've got the signaling up and running, we will be back at that level. That is one of the projects we've prioritized nationally, to bring back that on all of these corridors. So until we've done that and recovered the full service, we're not yet at that level of where we were before COVID.
Yeah. Some good word coming from the minister and other quarters, I suppose, on the Goodwood Station Social Housing Initiative. It's quite advanced. It's over 90% of it now complete?
Absolutely. So that's part of our secondary mandate, where we're looking at generating revenues through our assets. In this case, we own quite large portions of land. Nationally, 5,000 hectares of land we own. A lot of that is operational land. But we've identified approximately 200 hectares of land that could be developed. You mentioned the Goodwood. Also in Cape Town, just earlier this week, we launched the development at Cape Town Station. Yes. 3,200 beds, student accommodation, as well as 7,000 square meters of retail. It's a 1.2 billion rand investment at the station. And that's what we are looking at our key flagship stations like Cape Town, Park Station here in Johannesburg, Durban Station, where we want to look at this mixed-use development around these stations.
Yeah. And what are you doing? I mean, we had a conversation the other day with the electricity minister on for example, the returning of particular power stations on time and in fact, earlier than the expected time. And he says, well, these things are not just things that are happening in the sky. This is a result of good engineering. At work and planning. Yeah. Smart engineering, I think, is the word that he used. Now, you have an engineering background yourself. How is that assisting in some of this work that you do?
Well, absolutely. It's allowed me to hit the ground running. I've been in Prasa for a number of years, but also been around in terms of the strategic planning as well as the technical project side of things. So from that point of view, I think it certainly helped me to get on with the job as quickly as possible. What has helped in terms of our recovery, and it's been very important, is that we've established a war room within Prasa. And this war room is tracking each of our programs. If you were to ask on any of the corridors that we're busy recovering, we can go and look at that corridor. You can see exactly the progress. When are we aiming to recover that corridor? You can look at any of the work packages, be it on the electrical infrastructure, the per-way recovery, what security interventions we are doing, and by when are we launching the new blue train. So we've got this war room that meets daily. There are daily meetings, there are weekly meetings with the contractors to make sure that this program is being closely monitored, tracked, and where there are issues, we can take quick decisions to address some of these things. Yeah. Part of the engineering solutions that we have done, and it goes back to what we raised about the security side of things, is that we've also started deploying technology that reduces, for example, your copper content, which you've seen has been quite key in terms of the cable theft and so forth. So in terms of our electrical infrastructure, our substations, we've reduced copper content by 70%. So all of these things we are bringing in. Part of this recovery and rebuild is to modernize as well. It's not just rebuilding, we are modernizing the system as we go forward.
And of course, the other things that engineering can't help you, and these are things that generally have got to do with politics and community engagement and interaction. So the Cape Town Central Line seems to always be hitting a snag when it comes to the relocation. It's remaining a challenge. I believe, there are 4,000 households that you need to now move that have built their homes on that railway line. You have bought land, if I'm correct, or you've identified land. You have submitted a planning application, but there is a sense that somewhat there is no community buy-in, or at least one councillor there says, it's fine, you can do that, you can buy the land, you can do the application, but they're going to get to the people who are unhappy about where you're moving them because there are no schools, they say, there's no public transport, basic services there are minimal. If they are there are 2 informal settlements, and they are saying this one that you are bringing now, you're going to build on private land. They're not even quite sure how then is council going to come in and provide services. Yeah. How do you respond to those issues?
The Central Line in Cape Town is a priority project for us. And to be honest, this is one project that is hurting us at the moment. It's hurting us, it's hurting the communities, it's hurting the city in terms of a well-functioning city. The Central Line makes up 40% of rail passenger utilization in the city. It is one that we would have liked to get back a lot sooner, but it's got a lot of challenges, as you've mentioned. The issue of the encroachment in the reserve has been a major challenge in terms of, and you've mentioned the numbers, over 5,000 shacks that needs to be relocated. We've managed to recover parts of the Central Line, which is sometimes maybe not well understood or acknowledged, is that we've managed to recover the section through to Nyanga. Yes. So we can run trains from Cape Town to Nyanga. Yes. We now need to get through to Philippi, eventually through to Khayelitsha and to Mitchell's Plain. To get through to Philippi, we got to deal with plus minus 890 shacks, which is on the railway line within 10 meters of the railway line itself. And that's where Prasa has identified an interim solution to relocate those 890 shacks on a temporary basis. I must stress this, it's temporary, it's not a long-term solution, because they will still be relocated within the rail reserve, but further back from the railway line. It's about 50 meters back from the railway line. So it's a temporary solution. This allows us to bring our contractors in because that section of line needs to be rebuilt completely. We need to pull up the railway tracks, redo the foundations and relay the line there. Once we have done that section, we can then get to Khayelitsha and to Mitchell's Plain. So that aspect has been a challenge. What has been done around that to assist Prasa, there's been an implementation protocol where we've got other spheres of government and departments to assist with this relocation. Got human settlements, Department of Transport, Public Works, and importantly, we've got the HDA, the Housing Development Agency, as the implementing agency to drive that. We've made it very clear that this relocation is temporary. We need to find a long-term solution. This is what you were referring to in terms of the identification of land, making sure the public consultation, participation has happened, and that is buy-in and approval around that land. And that's where we're working on. Prasa has recently met. We've presented to SCOPA as well. That we'll also be making the funding available to assist and get this project forward for that land. Even though it was not our responsibility at the time to make it, but to get the project moving, to make sure that we can get the trains running,
Right.
Hopefully by March next year is what we are targeting.
Yes.
For a limited service.
So I must understand this very clearly. So the Stock Road station land, that's the 891 households.
Yeah, correct.
Right. That is what they're saying is what? It's going to cost about 50 million rands to acquire that land?
No. The land that's approximately 50 million is a long-term solution.
It's a long-term solution.
Okay. That land, there's some sites that have been identified. I think there's quite advanced in terms of identifying that piece of land, and that's what the 50 million is for.
All right. As far as the Stock Road station land, one, the issues around fencing, access to roads, there are questions around the sloping of the land and the question of power lines that are going over there.
You are correct. It is adjacent to the Eskom site. There are power lines there, but we are building it in terms of the safe distance from that. The site will be fenced off. We are busy regrading the site so that we've got the right slopes there. And then we will be laying some concrete bases there that those shacks can be built on top. So that is not built in terms of in the wetland, so to speak.
Right.
So that work is happening. I was on site just earlier this week. There are some challenges with water because of the heavy rains that Cape Town experienced 2 weeks back. The area is still a bit flooded. But the teams are on site now preparing that Stock Road site for the relocation.
Yeah. And the current dispute, is it a dispute really around whether or not HDA is aware of the public consultation process that the MMC has announced? Has that been cleared?
I saw that earlier. I'm not quite sure what is happening, what that was referring to, because there's been discussion. We've got the steering committee that we all are part of, and there's been the parcels of land that's been identified. I need to check in terms of the public participation what exactly was being referred to there. But certainly we've got the steering committee where these things are being discussed in terms of land identification.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. And you've got the buy-in there of the people. When you're saying that contractors are on site, it does seem the issues around the Philippi Business Forum and the likes have been sorted out. And what was the key area of disagreement? Initially,
there were challenges regarding the Stock Road site in terms of the communities, also the small business forums. Prasa went on an extensive stakeholder engagement process where we engaged the communities, because we're also employing some labor from the communities in this project. We engage the Philippi business forums in terms of the opportunities, not only on the Stock Road Operation Bakela sort of relocation, but also other projects on the corridor. For example, Philippi Station. We've got a station contractor there that is on site. We've engaged the small business forums around that. So we've had an extensive 2-week engagement. As we speak now, everyone is on board. Contractors are on site at Stock Road. There was initial delay with the Philippi Station contractor. That has been resolved, and the contractor is back on site as well.
Some of your thoughts tonight coming through on WhatsApp 0721105584, and we are with the Group CEO at the Passenger Rail Agency of South Africa. Here's one from Anonymous saying, "Evening, Thabo, the CEO, what is it you are doing with regards to fixing infrastructure that TFR can emulate from Prasa?"
In fact, we're already collaborating with TFR, particularly on the security side. We've made some good progress in terms of our security strategy. We've been implementing an integrated approach to that, starting off by increasing the boots on the ground. We've increased the numbers, physical presence at our stations, along the corridors, even on the trains itself. We are now at the phase where we want to start rolling out technology. We're looking at CCTVs as well as drone technology on the corridors. So that's the next phase. And we have been collaborating. There are specific structures between ourselves, Transnet, Eskom, Telkom, where we share these ideas, particularly around where we've got infrastructure that's in close proximity to utilize the resources, I think, effectively. Yeah. What we have also done, which has been quite significant, is in our security space, a lot of our security officials have now graduated to become peace officers. Yes. And they can now make arrests within our environment. It gives them those powers so that we can act immediately when there are transgressions within our space.
So I assume when you say that a large portion of that security component is insourced.
We've got insourced as well as outsourced, but you're correct. Internally, we've got close to 4,000 personnel in security. We do outsource as well in terms of long-term contracts to have security on board. And this is because the extent of our network. I mentioned earlier 2,300 kilometers, various facilities that we need to protect. And also what we're rolling out now in addition to technology, I've mentioned earlier was the walling and fencing. It's a very important program to secure the assets.
Because part of the encroachment problem, of course, we know that arose because of a lack of security.
Absolutely. Lack of security and also not having a closed network. It becomes easy to invade the network. We've also been saying that the sooner we get the trains up and running, and especially when we're running at high frequency, it's the best deterrent for crime, theft and vandalism, when we've got the trains up and running.
So there was an issue around the CEO not, again, consulting with the people and not exercising sensitivities around some of the traditional practices in the land in which you were going to actually move the people or relocate the people. Has that been addressed?
Yes, we saw that when the issue was raised, we immediately responded to that in terms of those rights, in terms of the land, traditional practices. It was quickly determined that it was not the site that in Stock Road Station that we were relocating to. It's on the adjacent piece of land. In fact, it's the land owned by Eskom, and that is not being touched in terms of the relocation. So that matter has been addressed. We only became aware when we saw it in the papers, because we've been through extensive consultation, stakeholder engagement, and this issue was not brought before us. And therefore, when it came through, it came as a surprise. But we were not surprised when we learned it was another parcel of land.
Then the question, you've already mentioned that it actually was not your place to do it, but you are doing it now because you want to open up the line. You want to get in and operate in that line. So you are going to somewhat raise the money to get the land, right? At what stage and how is the process of handing it over to the city going to happen in order for them then to service it? Because obviously if it's private land, they would not have the right to do that.
So we have engaged the city on the Stock Road land, and the city has agreed to provide the basic services. The water and sanitation, refuse removal will be provided by the city. That has been agreed to. As I mentioned, this site is meant to be temporary, so there can be no handing over. It's still within our reserve. It's within the railway corridor, and we don't want people settling within the rail reserve. It has become very important because we need to get trains running in that corridor. The communities along that line, Khayelitsha, Langa, Gugulet to Mitchell's Plain, are suffering tremendously because the trains are not running. We know how it's hurting the pocket. We've seen where we've launched the services on many other corridors, the impact it has on those communities. I mean, people are saving up to 50% of their household income on transport when we reintroduce the rail services.
The claim is that the CEO is blocking the devolution of the train service to the city. In fact, Unite Behind is taking you to court because they're expecting you to have come up with a service level plan. And they're saying you have not done so.
Seems I'm being given powers that I don't have. The issue around devolution, the policy debate is at our shareholder level. It's with the Department of Transport that is spearheading that process. There's the national rail policy that speaks to that, which Unite Behind the city is referring to. But I've made our position clear as Prasa. We're an implementing agent. Our focus and the team is solely focused on recovering and rebuilding this network. That must be the priority at this point in time. The institutional restructuring, the policy debate will happen. And whether there's institutional restructuring, you still have to recover and rebuild. So we are not resting on our side. We want to bring back the trains. We want to recover the corridors. Just in Cape Town, as an example, Thabo, just this week, we started energizing another line. The line down to Strand. Strand to Bellville now will be operational by the end of this week. Early next week, we should be running a commercial service. The line to Stellenbosch, by the end of the year, we will be bringing it back. And as I've indicated, we really want to get the central line back. We are pushing that by March next year. Hopefully there are no further delays with relocation and so forth, that we can start getting a limited service back on these corridors. So the team, we are focusing on, let's get the railway system working. It's always better when you've got a well-functioning system. before you have the other debates.
Yeah, because the picture is that, well, the city can do a better job, basically, and national is actually blocking us, which, of course, ultimately will reflect on whether or not Prasa is doing what Prasa is supposed to be doing.
I also want to just indicate that we are working closely with the city, and not to give the impression we are not working with the city. There are statutory structures that is required in terms of the National Land Transport Act. There's the intermodal planning committees, your land transport advisory boards, and Prasa serves on all of these committees within the city. We are sharing the plans, we are sharing our programs, and like I said, we take the issue of this Operation Bakela. The city is on board. They're in agreement with this process, supporting getting the relocation done so that we can open the line. So the whole aspect around not wanting to move, I think we've got cooperation structures in place. We've indicated around the service level agreement that is being raised. It's in the National Land Transport Act. We have raised that we are not disputing that is required, but let's take into account and give context to where we are with the railways today. We are still in a recovery and rebuild phase. We are not operating a normal rail service as yet. We are still recovering the signaling system, so that needs to be taken into account. There are also things that we require the city to assist with. I've just mentioned the issue on the relocation, the services, security side, the issue of integration points with the network. So it works both ways, and I think we have given that feedback to the city. There's an understanding. We are talking. So I'm a little bit surprised by when I see there's now court challenges around this thing, when in fact we've been having these discussions.
Yeah. Speaking of that question of collaboration with the city, the work that you're doing, especially around the relocation, is that within the municipal special policy? Is that within there, the relevant district plans and so on and so forth?
So firstly, the relocation in terms of within our reserve, we have set up this implementation protocol where we've got the various departments and levels of governments involved. There are very clear roles and responsibilities for each entity. Prasa's responsibility was to get the rail infrastructure back and to get the trains running. The issue of land identification sits with the City of Cape Town as the planning authority to identify land. We have dealt with the issue of funding, which became a bit of a stumbling block. As we've discussed earlier, we've put the funding on the table. We've indicated it's not that we've got spare funding, because we're running out a massive recovery program, but to make sure that we can recover Central Line, the funding is on the table. So the identification of land with the city, human settlements, key role player in terms of identifying public works, what land we have there. There are parcels of land that have been identified. And those, if I can call it entities, those spheres of government will be leading that side of the process.
Right.
Yeah.
The next phase, I don't know, is it phase 2 of the relocation, which is the more permanent relocation phase, is said to demand somewhat 117 million rands. Is that the sum?
In total.
Yeah. Where's that money going to come from?
So already the 50 million that we're referring to is the one to get this phase 2 to happen. There was already land identified for phase 1. That's predominantly the Langa settlement that needs to be dealt with. Approximately 1,200 shacks that need to be moved. But the Philippi section is the one that is, the numbers are a lot higher, close to 4,000 that we need to deal with. So I think once we have got that land secured, in terms of the 60 million, it's actually 60 million that we put on the table, 50 for the land, but there's also 12 million earlier that the HDA made available to secure that. So that's what we've put on the table. There are other aspects that Prasa is doing in addition to that around the security, securing the land, putting up the fencing on some of this parcels of land.
All right. Let's go to WhatsApp now, 072-110-5584. Some of your questions are coming through for the Prasa CEO. Good day to the Group CEO. I'm not sure whether you're aware about salary discrepancies in train operations, as drivers are not getting the same pay and some metro guards earn more than drivers. What is your take on that?
Okay, I'm not specifically aware of the item being raised. But I've just come off an extensive roadshow across the country, across all the regions that we're operating at. And various issues have been raised. Staff concerns that they've got, issues about working hours. The issue around pay has always been something. We've seen that there's not been increases for the past 3 to 4 years at Prasa, and just last year was the first time that an increase was provided, and that's because we start to see some recovery happening back at Prasa. Now, the issues being raised are things that we will be taking seriously around the harmonization of the salary, the benefits and remuneration. I'm not specifically aware of the item being raised, but I've made a note of it now. We will take it up with the respective departments. But I also want to indicate that during this period, we've had an extensive engagement with Labour. Labour has been with us in terms of the road shows. They've been raising a number of issues very sharply that as management we've been responding to, because critical for this recovery is to ensure that this 15,000 strong workforce that we have got at Prasa is all fully on board. Yeah. And I've been saying this on the road show. There are many hard-working men and women at Prasa. People are up at 2 o'clock in the morning, 1 o'clock to get the trains ready, preparing the trains, securing the assets 24 hours a day. So this has to be acknowledged. The aspect that gets a lot of attention is on those corruption and those things. Yeah. But that is being dealt with. But that is a small percentage of the workforce at Prasa. Yeah. So I've noted the issue that has been raised, Thabo. I can't respond in detail to that specific aspect, but we will look into it.
I was going to come to that. I was saving that for last. How are you responding to the corruption question and the consequence management question?
Yeah. It's been a very important question around the slow progress on some of these things. I won't go into the specifics on every case, obviously, but it's something that I must state up front that one is not, when I say one, the board management is not happy with the pace around this. We've set up a specific task team that has been set up. We've now had significant engagements around some of these cases with a view to see how we bring some of them to a close. One way or another through the normal disciplinary process or closing it through another. And hopefully very soon we can communicate the progress we have done around that.
Yeah. Without getting into the details, because we don't want to get you into trouble, of course, it's the work that the board is doing. But are the bottlenecks around investigations? Are the bottlenecks around court challenges to some of the processes that you're putting in place? What is bringing the delays?
Look, some of those things, and we've made progress, I want to say that. Where we've got delays and cases have been dragged out, it's also cases where you've got hearing dates set down and then on the day something transpires, the person's not available, person is off sick. And that has been, we've seen a number of delays happening through that aspect. What I would though like to focus on is that we've been working very closely with the SIU on a number of these cases. You will recall there were initially 44 cases that were identified through that process, through Zondo. 11 of them, those staff had already left Prasa, and there were 33 that we needed to focus on. Of the 33, I think as late as a week or two ago, there were just 2 that we still needed to resolve. So we've pushed to close many of these cases. The ones that I think is well ventilated in the media is the ones that we're now having a direct approach to see how we can close these items sooner rather than later.
All right, let's take one more WhatsApp message, 072-110-5584. Jackie saying, evening, Thabo, the Prasa CEO is doing a great job, and we can understand some of the things he is talking about. Today I drove past Stock Road Station and I could see the land being prepared. Well, there you are. Some people already seeing the difference that is beginning to happen on the ground. The overall recovery timeline that you have set for yourself, when do you see this work being completed?
Okay. We are hoping that by, you're talking generally, nationally.
Yes.
Okay. We are looking at by the end of this financial year, by the end of March next year, we want to have recovered approximately 30 to 32 corridors. That will be 80% of our network will be recovered where we can start running trains. The balance of those corridors, some of them are owned by Transnet. And we are in discussion with Transnet to prioritize the recovery of some of those sections, critical sections for our network. So as I've mentioned, just this year before the end of December, we're already recovering a few corridors. Here in Gauteng, Thabo, we're happy to report that we've recovered Lerala to Germiston. Yeah. We've opened the Germiston to Park. We are now able to run a train from Pretoria to Park Station. In fact, we can run it from Mabopane through to Naledi in Soweto.
Sure.
But the nice thing, we're now connecting the 3 metros. We by no means yet running a perfect service. We need to accelerate the signaling, because that's going to bring more trains on the network. It will allow us to increase our speeds on some of these sections and allow us to operate more safely with a signaling system. At the moment, we're operating manual authorization. Hence, we need to run fewer trains at this point in time. So by the end of this financial year, 32 corridors is what we are targeting. We've got contractors on site as we speak around the country, bringing back these corridors. But signaling remains a high priority. We have got Mabopane and Salisbury. We've got contractors on the ground. We're out in the market for recovering the other corridors in Gauteng. Yeah. We've just recovered the Simonstown line in Cape Town, right. And we're working on the Central line. And then in KZN, we've made one of our flagship appointments to recover the entire network, and that appointment was made recently as well. Yeah.
Appreciate your time. Let's leave it there for tonight, and thank you very much for coming in.
Thank you so much, Thabo.
That's the Group CEO at Prasa, Hishaam Emeran.